Welcome to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McLernan, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about two very important things. Number one, the stories shared here are often gritty, raw, and vulnerable, and very likely will include speaking about sensitive topics suited for a mature audience. Number two, this podcast is also broadcast live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So on whatever platform you follow myself or Freedom Nutrition Coaching, you have the opportunity to participate in this discussion during the live stream. And we encourage your participation both by commenting and asking questions. And so this podcast is about exploring the stories that take place between the before and after photos, not just in the realm of weight loss, but in all areas of life. So let's dive in. All right, welcome back. I'm excited to be hosting JM Ryerson today. And my first question is, what does JM stand for?
James Michael, but if you say that, brother, I have done something terribly wrong and I am in deep trouble. So JM typically, but my mom calls me James Mike when I'm in deep trouble.
Okay, so you've been JM for as long as you can remember.
Well, I was also a slow child, so my parents were like, let's make it really easy on the kid, and we're just going to give him two initials. And most of the time, I answer to pretty much anything, but yeah, JM since I can remember.
Yeah, and so if people were to find you today, because we're going to explore the backstory behind this, what are you doing today? Because we're going to figure out how you got there.
Yeah, brother. Thank you. Let's go win.com. Let's go win podcast. Let's go win anything basically is what this company is all about. And it's all about all of us winning. So I'd love for people to check it out. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. And so we look at how you actually got here, because again, people will look at the social media, look at the website, they'll see all the things you're doing, and be like, wow, this guy is really, really successful and he's doing all of these amazing things in life. But sometimes we sort of mistake that for like this, this must have been an easy journey. And I suspect that it hasn't been. So, if we rewind the clock a little bit, how did you get to the place where this is what you wanted to do with your life?
Yeah, man. So this is the fourth company I've had a chance to build. I guess that's where I'll start. And then rewinding that is I'm a kid from Montana that I'm passionate about playing sports. The first thing that happened to kind of rearrange what I thought I was going to do was having my third knee surgery my freshman year of college, to which kind of derailed my entire athletic career, what I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And so then I ended up studying abroad, kind of found myself as like, okay, I like to travel. I like to experience other cultures. This is pretty cool. And when I came back home, I shockingly graduated way earlier than I thought. So it was like, okay. And I just went from Montana, moved with my truck and a backpack to California. And I ended up couch surfing and stayed there for 20 years, 2 kids and a wife later. So that's kind of the backstory. But, of course, lots of adversity along the way. I mean, my goodness, I started off in the corporate world and realized really quick I suck as an employee. I don't like people telling me where I have to be. So I should probably figure a different path out. And I found a business partner, someone that brought me on. And that started the first company because he had this awesome product or company. And I said, well, why don't you do this nationwide? He's like, I don't know why would I? I said, well, would you be open to it? Sure. So then I moved up to Portland and we started the first company. And it was great, man. We were young and we were dumb and we were having fun and we were literally just building. And along that path, as through sheer grit, blood, sweat, tears, all that nonsense, we grew. And we grew at the unfortunate part of almost losing my marriage, almost losing my family, not being real healthy. So you're looking for the adversity. There's plenty of there. No matter how many zeros were on that check, we were winning on one side and we were completely losing on the other. And so about the time of the second company, I realized this isn't what I want. This is not what I signed up for. And I learned to really just be me. So before, if I was doing this interview in company 1 and first half of company 2, I'd be in a suit and tie. But now you just get JM. This is jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. and I'm just going to give you everything I got, my very best effort. And what I found, John, is it's amazing how fast we grew the latter part of company 2, company 3, and now company 4 by just being myself instead of trying to look and sound a certain way. And so this company is what I call my legacy company. This is everything I am absolutely obsessed with, inspiring people to live their best lives. And that's what Let's Go Win is all about. So it all started with writing a book for my 2 kids, then into a podcast, some coaching, and I literally get to wake up and work with people every day on living their best life. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So what sport did you play at university?
So I played basketball in college. So quick story on that. I was actually a much better swimmer, and I had basically a full ride to any Pac-10 school at the time. I guess it's Pac-12 now. Or after 2 knee surgeries in high school, I had this little junior college that was going to pay for my books. Well, I chose basketball and getting my books paid for, to the chagrin of both my parents. Like, what are you doing? This is not a real path. But you know what? I love team sports. And I think that's why Let's Go Win. Everything about me is team. I love teams.
So you had the chance to go on a swimming scholarship, and you chose a basketball one instead.
I chose a basketball scholarship to a very small school in Eastern Montana. I loved every second of it, even the last knee surgery.
Yeah. And what were you studying?
So I studied psychology and communications, basically anything that didn't involve math and had a high girl to guy ratio. That's how I chose my majors. But I ended up kind of falling in love with both, being that I do both of them for a living, I suppose. But yeah, that wasn't how I picked it originally.
That's funny. It's interesting how we end up doing what we're doing. I had no idea I'd end up doing this. I say, like, if I'd have known 20 years ago, like, this is the path I was going to be on, like, I probably would have exited early.
That's so true.
Yeah. So a couple surgeries, you finished this. Where did you meet your first business partner? Is he still a business partner of yours, or?
He's not. I actually bought him out of the third company. Not just myself and my other business partner. And you know what? It was what he was ready for at that season of life. So he is no longer. But what was your original question? Where did I meet him?
Where did you meet him? How does this conversation start?
Yeah, man. So I thought, because I come from a line of FBI agents, and my uncle, my grandfather, I thought I was going to do that. And I had my application in, I was going through the process, and then I went to a wedding, got arrested for getting in a fight, and that all went out the window. So when I met my business partner who hired me, I had no intention, but I just liked him. And I remember him saying 2 things. He said, look, there's no glass ceiling on how much you can make, and you can golf every Friday. And I was like, done, I'm in. That was about as much as I knew. But it just set me on this entrepreneurial path in the life insurance, annuities, investment world. And I built teams. Truth be told, if you ask me any financial question, I'm going to point you any other place but me, because I build teams. That's what I've done as leadership for a long time.
Okay, so the first business was like, because when you say product, I guess many people might picture like a physical product, but you said, hey, this is like an insurance product that could go beyond, wherever he was selling it.
Yeah, essentially we would meet with middle Americans and make sure that they were protecting themselves. And that's how it all started. And what I found is you can build this anywhere. And that's where it all started when I went to Portland, because look, this is a good product. More people need to know about it. Why aren't we doing this all over the country? And so that's what we ended up doing.
So you decided, hey, I want to teach more people how to do this, and this is how you get into sort of the idea of building teams.
I just knew that there was a big need for more of the product, and I knew I was only limited in how much I wanted to actually do that. And so I quickly started building teams, which came pretty naturally to me. Just meeting people and saying, hey, look, I believe in you. Do you like what we're doing? Yes, cool. Guess what? There's no glass ceiling on how much you can make, and you can golf every Friday. And it's shocking how many people are like, yep, that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, that's a great proposition. It probably still work very well today. So
I think it would work for me still today. That's for sure.
Right. But there comes a point in time where you decide, hey, I'm not sure I want to keep doing this, because maybe you're putting too much of yourself into it, or it's taking too much of your time.
Yeah, brother. I loved that career for 18 years that I did that for the three companies. And what I found is once I wrote the book, and that literally was meant to be for just my two kids. And the gal that I was working with said, "Man, I didn't know you're a selfish person." I said, "I don't think I'm selfish." She said, "If you don't share this book with more than two human beings, you're selfish." Lesson learned. We went ahead and distributed, published, and got it out. And next thing I know, I had somebody say, "Hey, can you help my son lose 80 pounds?" I was like, "Yeah, I could do that." Somebody said, and so we did. And so we ended up doing that with him. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
somebody asked, "Can you help this PGA golfer make a cut?" Because he missed like 12 cuts in a row. And yeah, I could do that. And
Yeah.
so what I found is the methodology, quote, and I'm using air quotes because it
Mm.
was just me having conversations with these guys and creating some habits, but I found out how much I loved it. And then
Mm.
once the podcast started rolling, John, I fell in love with it, man. I absolutely love talking to people just like you and I are doing right
Yeah, yeah.
now and hearing stories about the challenges they're facing, where they want to go. How can I be a small part of them winning in life? And if I can do that, it fills my bucket.
Mm. But you said somewhere along the way you nearly lost your marriage, nearly lost your family. How did you sort of get to that place where it's like, uh-oh, this is on the rocks? What was kind of happening?
Yeah, brother. I mean, I think I forgot who I was, and it sounds so weird to say now, but I think
Yeah.
it happens to a lot of us.
Mm.
I thought I had to look a certain way. I thought I had to sound a certain way. I was doing, sleeping 4 hours a night and grinding those 60 to 80 to plus hours a week. And what was happening is I was spending so much time at work and I was thriving in it, but I wasn't spending the proper amount of time back home with my most important relationship, with my wife, with my kids. And there were times, I mean, it pains me to say it now, but I could have gone home, but I chose to work more.
Mm. Mm.
And we were definitely celebrating, too much drinking at the time. And so it was a recipe for disaster ultimately, that I wasn't showing up as me, as the vulnerable, authentic human being that I try to be every single day today, but rather I was a shell of myself, and I
Mm.
hurt relationships along the way, anything in the pursuit of winning, but that wasn't really winning. And I didn't understand it at the time. But what's so funny, brother, is how much faster we grew once I learned to just be me again. So
Right. So you thought, and I think many entrepreneurs go through this. Like, I just got to pour more of myself into this business, and at the end of this road, this business is going to be successful. I'm not going to have to work nearly as hard, and then you find out that, oh crap, this is a trap.
yeah, all be set, win, all be happy, win, all blank, win. You can say it all day long, but your win is right now. Tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
And for many, many years, brother, I said all of those things like, "Oh, I'll spend more family time, win. I'll do X, win." The win was right then and there. I just didn't see it. And
Mm.
it's surprising, brother, because I pride myself on being a pretty simple guy, not getting caught up in all of that, the ego and whatnot, but I did. And
Mm. Mm.
I kind of got obsessed with making more money, growing the business as my relationships and everything else were getting destroyed. So it sucks that it had to happen, but I wouldn't change it for
Mm.
anything. I wouldn't change it because I know it can never happen again, because I know how happy I am now and how much more I'm succeeding in business with so much less effort.
Yeah. How did it come to your attention that like this has changed? Was this something like your wife was telling you, or was this you had a change of heart yourself? This moment of realization in the middle of the night kind of thing, or did she say to give you an ultimatum like, hey, something has to change, otherwise it's not worth it for me to stick around?
Yeah, it was definitely an ultimatum. We mutually parted ways and separated for almost a year. So one of the things you'll know about me is my kids and my wife are my everything.
Mm.
So me going from having 100%, now I again air quote the
Mm.
100% because I wasn't necessarily there 100% of the time, but I had the option to be.
Yeah.
Now having them 50% of the time, it crushed me. And I knew right then and there, this is not what I wanted to be. I need to be a better man. I need to work on myself. And that's when I really had that insightful look to say, what needs to change? What's
Yeah.
really going on to fill your buckets? Because you're losing what you said was most important to you. The reason you work so hard, you're losing them. So what's really going on? And once I had that insightful time, and again, that year sucked, man. It was
Yeah.
brutal, but I had a lot of time to myself to just to journal, to
Mm.
meditate, to spend time with myself and figure out, yeah, man, you need to do better.
Right. And so, I mean, a year apart before you got back together with your wife, I gather. Yeah.
Yes, almost 17 years now.
Yeah, which is
Uh,
amazing. And so in that time, like you said, you have time to kind of work on yourself, but part of the reason that you ended up separating is because you weren't showing up for that relationship. And so you have some time to yourself now. How much contact did you have with her, or was she like, "Don't talk to me until until you can uh, really show up in a different way"?
as anybody that goes through those separations, it was sporadic. One moment it was good, and you want to get back together, and then something triggers, the finger pointing, and so it was sporadic. I'm trying to answer it as concisely as I can, but
Mm-mm.
we had, some communication, but in the beginning it wasn't real positive. So
Yeah,
we limited that. And as I had less and less time, I realized how much I had missed. And it's amazing how you can go from loving this human being to almost the borderline of hatred. And it's
hmm
like, wait a minute, what happened? Is it actually
yeah,
them or is it me? And so as I had less and less communication, I realized how much I missed her.
yeah, yeah. That's quite something. And what did you miss about her when you were apart from her?
Well, I mean, I miss her smile. I miss her support. She makes me a better person. And at the time, I didn't realize some of the things she was pushing me to be a better person. I was saying, like, look at what I'm building. What are you talking about? And almost, became very resentful towards her when she's
Yeah,
trying to help me. That's the
yeah, yeah,
funny
yeah.
part. It's so ironic how the people that are trying to help us often we lash out at them first.
Oh, yeah, and it's funny because I see some similarities in our stories just in terms of like I had a business fail, it cost me everything, and except for my marriage, thankfully. But my wife had been pointing out the red flags like long before, and I had blinders on and I couldn't see it, and I was so hell bent on this thing that I was trying to build to try to build a better life and so on, and I was missing the forest for the trees, and so so you get to the place where you feel like you almost like hate this person, and then you're like, whoa, where did this emotion come from? How do you start rebuilding that? Because there's probably some trust broken there, and like, can I trust that if you come back into this relationship that you're going to be different and so on?
Yeah, we created some really strong habits straight away. And we started with what are our expectations of one another. One of the things that we didn't do early in our marriage because we were just young, we were in love,
Mm-mm.
everything was great, but we didn't actually go in with expectations of, hey, this is how I expect you to show up. This is how I expect you to show up. And again, culturally, we come from a completely different place. My wife is half Thai, half Chinese. So
Hmm.
there's that strong Asian culture, and when she and her, or excuse me, not her, but her parents would fight, that was like weird to me because my parents, for 51 years, they never fought. And
Right.
so we brought that into the relationship as well. And so what we figured out is how to communicate. We
Yeah.
actually have, I'll give you one piece of advice, brother, that I will give to any couple. We have our safe word when things are going real poorly, when it's
Yeah.
like nothing good's going to come from it. We say the word blueberry. Blueberry means no more talking. We're going to
Right.
put a pin in this thing, and we may or may not come back to this subject, but
Yeah.
anything that's about to come out is going to be harmful. So we're just going to shut it down. And so once we built
I love
those
that.
expectations, once we built the habits of communication, it's amazing how easy things really started to come together. Then you start looking at this person as in, oh, I remember how much I respect you, how much I love you, why I married you to begin with, how amazing you are. But it's amazing how you, or at least I lost that along the
Mhm.
way.
I think many people do. Well, then I'm curious. How did you first meet her?
So I actually met her when I started working for Enterprise Rent a Car straight away out of college. I was actually her boss. Now, we didn't date at the time. I swear I was a good boy.
Yeah.
But that's how I met her. She was a terrible car washer, and I let her know about that as well. But you know what? I met my best friend is ultimately what happened.
Yeah.
And she happened to be pretty attractive, and it ended up being just a really cool relationship. And it's funny to think back how I lost that for a year. It's crazy.
Yeah. How long ago was that you had that year apart?
That was 2011. So that was over 11 years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get back together, you set some boundaries and some expectations, which I think is really, really powerful. And I think kind of to my own marriage, and credit to my wife again, she's amazing for sticking through. Like I don't know if it's something like we as men have to like wrestle with this for a period of time in our life, where we wrestle with our ego and our aspirations and our goals, and then these beautiful women in our lives remind us, hey, there's something that's more important, and you got to kind of make space for that.
Yeah, they're pretty smart. I mean, I have to say, it's like she was way ahead in terms of the boundaries. And you talked about the red flags, man. My wife she's right damn near every time. So when she says, hey, I get this weird spidey feeling like something here, I listen to it far more than my own intuition, because she is spot on.
Yeah, really, probably a great judge of character. Like my wife picked up on this with one of my former business partners, and she picked up on it, and I was in denial. I was like, no, that's not the case. You don't know him the way that I do. I work with him almost on a daily basis. I see this and this and this. And she was like, no, there's something not right here. And man, I wish I would have listened.
I'm chuckling because I've had the identical conversation. I can't tell you how many times, and she is right every time.
Yeah. Something about that intuition there that's amazing. And you got two boys as well. What ages are they?
Dude, man, 16 and 12. They're awesome dudes.
Yeah, what an interesting age. I'm a few years behind. Mine's just coming up on 15 months old, and one of the rituals that we establish is we call it morning snuggle time, and we toss him in the bed. I say toss him in the bed. No, we gently place him in the bed. I wrestle him a little bit, but we just have him and just snuggle him, tickle him, wrestle with him. He tells us stories. We're not sure what he's saying exactly, but he's waving his arms and making noises, and that's like like the best part of my day in a sense, is because I'm reconnecting to what matters most to me. And so I'm kind of curious, as they get older and they get bigger and they get sort of more independent and so on. How do you go about keeping that going?
Yeah, brother. So I started something when my kids started the day they were born, and I would say it until they were able to say it back to me. And they do the same, I guess you call it daily affirmation, every single night. And I ask them, "Are you a leader?" And they say yes. And I say, "Why?" And they say, I'm confident, strong, intelligent, athletic, good-looking, dynamic, popular, talented, independent boy or man in this case with a growth mindset." Now, in hindsight, I wish I had just had them say like three things. But what's amazing is, to date, my 12-year-old will not go to bed unless I come in and do it with him.
Yeah.
And what's so cool about that, brother, and I any moms or dads listening, when they get told at school they're not popular, they're not smart, they're whatever, all the potential bullying things, my kids know. They're like, nope, I am. And it doesn't matter what Johnny or Susie or whatever said to them. They know who they are. So that's how I stay connected with them. And I still do it every single night.
That's amazing. So if you were to pick just three things, then what would you pick?
Oh, that's a great question. I probably would say confident, fun, strong, or maybe throw vulnerable, authentic, but it would be, fun would be one. Like, for instance, our three cultural values as a family is courage, fun, and love. And so my kids know, like, this is how we show up. We're going to be courageous, we're going to have fun, and we're going to love. And so whenever they're outside of that, they know that we're going to have a conversation. Was that being courageous? Or when you hit your brother, was that out of love? And it's like, it makes it so much easier to have a conversation instead of saying, don't do this because I said so. It's like, hey, remember the values that are right there on the wall? Was that, are you in alignment with those?
Which is really cool, because you're teaching them to anchor themselves to values rather than sort of external validation.
Well, for me, that's the only way I know how to operate. And again, I didn't know this in the first company and a half. And so every company since, we have three, values, and we talk about it every single meeting. Well, I started thinking about it. Why would it be any different than with my family? And so I wanted them to know what we stand for, who we are, so they don't compromise their own values along the way. Because as well as I do, early in life, when you're trying to fit in, that's when you start to put on that mask.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Bingo.
know, yeah,
And
go ahead.
I'm just thinking it's even harder like in today's like world because of digital access. I grew up as a kid of the 80s and 90s, graduated in the year 2000. The internet wasn't that big a deal in my life. I mean, I remember emailing my buddy back and forth to see how fast they could get to us. That was our instant messaging back in the day. And there was bullying and stuff that took place, but it's like when you go home, you go home. Like that was it. They weren't coming onto your property to pick on you or whatever. And now it's like there's almost like it's a relentless assault or potentially that. And if they're not anchored to these strong values, it can really, really start to mess with them.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I'll tell you what, and not to get on the soapbox, everybody wants to hop on, but those things are so addictive. I have
Mm,
rules in the house where it's like, hey, man, when we're having dinner together, that phone doesn't come out. I don't care what you want to look up, the score, even though I want to know the score too. Put it away. We are going to be present with one another. We are going to enjoy this
yeah.
time, because the truth is, I don't know how many more dinners we're ever going to have together.
Yeah.
Maybe it's hundreds of thousands, maybe it's literally one, but I want to treat this one as the very last one. I want to give you everything I have, and I want you to give it back to me. And you can't do that with this thing in the way.
Yeah, that's interesting because again, I think this is one of the things that we've established with my little boy. We have the morning snuggle time, and then we have family dinner together, and that's what this is about. We want him to know, lunch is hit and miss depending on what his nap time is and sort of my work schedule looks like during the day. But family dinner time together, and then I always block off time for we call it jammy time. Where maybe I have a call after that, maybe got a podcast or something like that after that. But yeah. And so and I just share that to sort of highlight what it might look like in real life. A lot of what you're describing, I'm trying to lay this down early on in life, early on in his life. I'm 40, so it's not so early in my life, but you know, you've established some really, really solid foundations. You said you got three core values for your company. Let's Go Win. What are they?
Courage, fun, and transcend. It's just one off from my family's, because one of the last one, transcend, to me means overcoming self-limiting beliefs. And
Hmm.
that's why this company's established, because so often we have these beliefs that get in the way of achieving what we want. So as much as I wanted to have love in there, because it would have made my life real easy to have
Yeah,
courage,
yeah.
fun, and love in both, I really felt that transcend was more important. So those are the three.
Cool. And I think, I love the fun because like my wife is a theater performer and so she's just a natural creative. And it looks like my little fella's, he's a drummer. You give him two sticks and he starts drumming on everything. But I think compassion and integrity are like the two. I often say they're the two core values. So I think I could put fun in there, and I've got my three set. So what do you do when So now like people look at what you're doing, look at your level of success. You get this really quality, you get great family dynamics, and do you still have tough days?
Oh, of course. I mean, look, I had one of the toughest days not long ago when I lost my dad. I mean, it
Yeah.
was it was really hard, and it's something that so much of what I teach and coach on, I had to put into practice again, and I do on a daily basis. So anybody that seems positive every single day, which is awesome,
Hmm.
kudos to them. That means they're putting in some real work, some real effort before you see them. So absolutely, I have bad days and I have great days, but you know what? I have tools in place that allow me to not have
Hmm.
a bad day turn into or bad moment turn into a bad day, into another bad day, and next thing you know, a year's gone.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really, really important to highlight because I understand why we show the highlights because we want to draw people to us from a place of wanting to help them succeed and do well. But it's important to say, hey, because I can't imagine I still have both my parents right now, but they're up in their 70s now, and so I'm sort of living with the reality that they're on limited time, and I'm more aware of it. And thankfully, they just moved like 2 blocks away instead of living 10 hours away, so we get to see them multiple times a week. But how do you navigate something like that? What do you put into practice to help you get through that?
Yeah, brother, I wrote a lot because he was no longer here. So how do I communicate with someone, especially it was such a sudden way that he passed. So I had to find my outlet to be able to communicate with him. Now, the one thing people need to remember about pen and paper is it never judges you. It doesn't say you're
Mm,
really smart, doesn't say you're stupid, doesn't say you're brilliant, doesn't say any of those things. It says nothing. It just absorbs the ink onto the paper, but it allows you to get it out of here. And when you get it out of your
mm.
head, because in here we are beautifully creative, we're also beautifully destructive. Maybe
Yeah,
it's not beautiful. I mean, it's remarkable how destructive we can
yeah.
be. And so for me, I journaled and I meditated. I got back into my routines as quickly as possible, although the first week or two, working out wasn't sounding all that ideal. I would go do it, but I wasn't really there. So I got back into my routine, but it started with the journaling, started with the meditation. Finally, I got back into reading after about a month and a half, which is crazy because I read like crazy, but I just couldn't see the page, the words on the pages. So it took a little time, but I
Mm.
did get back.
So, and I gather then you had like a pretty strong relationship with your dad.
Yeah, my dad and I were as close as you can get. It's weird to say your dad's your best friend, and it sounds so cliche, but I mean, we
Yeah.
really were close. So it's still, I mean, it sucks that he's not here, but I try to reach him in other ways to talk.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that, man. Because I mean, it's the inevitable experience that I think every one of us will go through. Those, at least those of us who have a, whether it's a stepfather or biological father or just parent in general, where we're going to experience that loss in life, and we have to go through, like, there isn't a shortcut or a pause button or a skip button around processing these emotions. Like, we have to give them place. And I love that you just sat down and you started writing, and the way that you describe it is really powerful. Just that the words don't judge you. I almost want you to share a little bit again how you described like writing and particularly putting pen to paper, because I thought it was really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the best therapy you can have is a pen and paper. It's about free. I don't know how much a pen costs. It's like 60 cents, and the paper is probably about the same, but there's zero judgment coming back. It won't say
Mm,
you're crazy and it won't say you're awesome. And the paper says nothing. But what it does is when you get it out of that brain, because when it's stuck up there, we create worlds in here. All sorts of things are going on. But when you purge, when you're able to get that out, you get some more clarity. Even if what I wrote down is crazy, which, by the way, I have a lot of writing that most people, they might check me into a hospital if they read
yeah,
it, but that's for me. And if
yeah.
you're scared of that, burn it. But
Mhm,
you
mhm.
need that process of literally getting
Yeah,
it out. And actually, John, I have a quick thing that I do share with people.
yeah.
If you are dealing with a fear or something, it's the 3 R's: recognize it and write it down. The second R is to release it, which is to literally go ahead and burn it. And then the last part is react in opposition of whatever that fear or whatever that anger, whatever that, react in opposition.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that's the cure all right there, but if you do it again and again and again, those 3 R's, if you can remember that, it's remarkable what you can get done.
Mm. That's quite something. So recognize, so really tune into what's going on, and then put that on paper. And I think the very act of writing it down is helping to sort of take shape, because the way that you describe it, I mean, I love that too, right? I call it the fuzzy monster in our head. We create this massive like picture in our head of everything that's going on, but once it's on paper, it can't necessarily change shape. It's like, okay, there it is as it is, and we're just getting it out. And the other thing, I think about this idea, like what you write, people might look at it and think that it's crazy, but how many weird thoughts do you have enter your head every single day, right?
A lot.
And weird dreams. You think about like dreams you have, and you're like, "What the heck?" Why was there like an octopus and a T Rex and a Jeep driving on a mountain together or something? You know, and it's like, where does that come from? So our brain is like a meaning making machine that's trying to sort through all this stuff, even. And so not every thought that enters our head is rational or true. In fact, probably a lot of them aren't true, and most of them aren't rational. But somehow we are able to sort of work through it to get to some sort of rational sense of what's happening in there.
Yeah, I mean, they say we have up to 60,000 thoughts a day, so they're not all going to be positive. They're all not going to be negative,
Yeah.
But there are ways to kind of monitor some of these things and get it out. And that's one of the journaling for me is just, it's something that I've had on and off throughout my life. But since basically probably, you know what, now that I say it, going back to, we call it the infamous year, going back to Lisa and I being separated, that's when journaling came back into my life and will not leave.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And I imagine though that when you got back together, like there's a different level of appreciation for each other. Like, and you're like, I never want to lose this again.
No, 100%. And you know, the other thing, we are grateful to have that. If
Mhm.
we didn't have that time, that anger, that resentment, we probably wouldn't appreciate what we have today. Similar to death. Okay. It's awful that I lost my dad. It's horrible, but it
Mhm.
also makes me appreciate life every single day that much more. It makes me want to hug my kids that much tighter. It makes me want to spend, every moment that I have, because life is fleeting, but you
Mhm.
can't recognize how good it is without having the bad part. So you're
Yeah.
right. And John, that I'm telling you, with my wife, you're right. We talk about it openly because it's like, remember how crappy that was back then? Now look at how amazing it is today. And we recognize if we start falling into patterns like, nope, we don't want back to that spot. So we
Yeah.
are grateful for that time.
Yeah. I think, I'm like, I kiss my kid probably 100 times a day, tell him I love you probably 100 times a day. He's not a snuggler, but I'm like, I'll take, I get them whenever I can, and he wrestles his way around or whatever. But, there's, I don't know, something about being a little bit older too. There's just kind of this awareness that, okay, like, and I don't get this time back, and
Mm.
we got to do something with it. So you wrote, speaking of children, you wrote a book, and Let's Go Win,
Mhm.
and which then became the podcast and now your legacy business. But you said originally you were just writing this book for your kids. Um, and I haven't read the book yet, but I probably will. I'll put it on my reading list. What is it really about?
Yeah, so it's called Let's Go Win Keys to Living Your Best Life, and it's broken up into 12 chapters. And it starts with vulnerability. I'll just tell you the first
Mm,
chapter because I'm a kid from Montana that was taught boys don't cry. Well, that's really, really bad advice. Let's not stuff things way down where it's going to blow up as a volcano. Actually, let it out if you need to. And so I start with vulnerability straight away because I want my kids to know that not to cry every day. That's not the point, but it's
mhm,
to be your authentic self, to put yourself out there. And then the remaining chapters are all just what I felt the most important areas of life for them to really check in on. So the book was wrote so that it was not too long, and
mhm,
there were at least 3 tangible takeaways that they could read it and say, oh, I
mhm,
see. This is how I don't skin my knee as much as my dad did. Now, the funny part is most of those lessons are not just mine. In fact, most of them are my parents, my grandparents, authors, and mentors all put into one book, because I don't know if my kids are going to read through, 20 to 30 books a year like I do.
mhm.
So I want to give them every opportunity to say, here you go. Here's the guidebook that I believe can really put you, set you ahead and make sure that you don't hit your head on things as much as your dad.
Yeah. You said authentic self, and this is a really interesting term because I think it gets thrown around a lot. And I
Mm,
kind of want your definition of it. And why I'm asking is, our feelings aren't necessarily reality. And I think this is where we see sometimes lines getting blurred and confusion coming in. I feel this way, therefore it must be real.
mm.
And I think, well, that's not entirely true. I treat emotions like a check engine light. They're indicating something, but they're not necessarily telling me exactly the reality of the situation. But I'm curious, how do you define like authentic self in a sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really deep question, brother. And what I will say is to find your authentic self, sometimes you have to rewind time. You have to go back to what you really enjoy. And so often they say kids know exactly what they want. So you're watching your little dude, he
Mm,
probably knows exactly what he wants. And then at some point, he'll lose some of that along the way. It's just the way life works, unfortunately. And so to reconnect back, to find exactly who you are, what you want, what's important to you, sometimes you just need to be quiet. You need to
mm,
stop all of this going on up in your brain. Again, for me, it's writing, reconnecting to nature. And when you do that, when you reconnect to who you really are, what your purpose is, like Let's Go Win is my purpose in life.
mm,
It took me 41 years, I guess, to find that, but I know
yeah.
what it is, and I'm clear from now until my death, this is my purpose. Now, maybe it shifts along the way. That is possible. But I will tell you, I'm really clear on it. But it took a lot of time to myself, a lot of downtime. And you said something so fascinating about emotions not necessarily being the case. And I agree. It's actually why I meditate every day, because I want to respond. I do not want to react. And emotions happen like that, but like 10,000 times faster than me snapping my fingers. So you can't really control the emotion. That's going to happen. But you can respond before you react, right? You can respond in a way that is more in alignment with who you are. So it's a lot of discovery. It's a lot of being insightful, but once you discover it, you'll be clear as can be.
So here's maybe one more kind of interesting question, because you work with a lot of different people. You're an entrepreneur, and so in a sense, you're taking your success into your own hands and building a business and whatnot. What if somebody's an employee and they're, maybe entrepreneurship just isn't their thing? So we make a mistake or think that, oh, maybe because I'm not on the same path that you're on, that I'm not winning at life. How would you encourage somebody like that?
Oh, that's not the case at all. That's the first thing I would say. Look, everybody has different values. My best friend, he literally is an incredible employee, and he is really, really good at it. And it's really where he is comfortable. It's his, it's where he thrives. Where for me, not knowing where the next paycheck is coming from, hair on fire, that just really fit with my personality. So it's really knowing, again, what suits you, what makes you comfortable. And I don't mean comfort in a don't try to be your very best. I mean comfort in a way where you feel that peace. And maybe that's a better word I should have said, is you're at peace with your decisions. You know that this is a peaceful place. And once you discover that, and specific with companies, figure out what your cultural values are and see if that aligns with that company. If it does, it could be an awesome partnership for a long, long time. But I'll tell you what, if those cultural values are not in alignment with you, it will end in divorce. That's just the way it works. So once you figure out what you stand for, make sure that company has some of those values as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to share with people a little bit about where they can find you, and so this is Let's Go Win here, and you got a lot of things on the go here. If people were in particular, if you were to send people to one place and say, hey, here's where I think my work can maybe be the most impactful for you starting out, where would you send people to?
I'd have them get the book, John. I mean, I poured my heart and soul into that. Let's Go Win. You can find it on Amazon or on the website. And I will tell you, if you want to know who JM is for whatever reason, that would be the easiest way to do it. And I'm proud of that work, and it's helped a lot of people. So that is one I have that for the remainder. No one can ever take that one away. No matter what happens, I was able to write that one. So that's where I'd send it.
Yeah. How was the process of writing a book?
Awesome. I mean, it's brutal. It's awesome and brutal at the same time. It's weird to say that, but because it's such a hardcore journaling session and you're trying to organize thoughts into some coherent, the entertaining thing.
Yeah. Some people actually want to read it.
Lot, but I love it. I didn't love it in the moment, and now I really love it now. As I'm writing the third book, by the way, which is kind of silly in itself.
Well, I'm in the process of writing my first book, and so
awesome.
I'm early on into the journey. So, but I'm excited about it, and I think calling it a hardcore journaling session is like pretty accurate. It's like and I feel like it's in there, and maybe those who write books are like, it's in there, but it's just a matter of time of like putting it on paper, and then you have to sort of organize this messiness and whatnot, and then hand it off to somebody else and be like, okay, I need you to judge this because I got emotional biases and whatnot. So yeah. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. You got so much wisdom to share. And if you were to just offer kind of one final takeaway, if people just take one thing away from this conversation, how would you like to encourage people?
I know I'm only supposed to say one. I'm going to say two really fast.
Okay.
One is show up as you, and that's that authentic self. I promise, whoever that is, you are very attractive to the right people. So be you, that 100%. And the other one is just be grateful for 3 things a day. If you want to be happy, write it down, speak it to the universe, just tell the whole world why you are grateful. you'll be a happy, happy person. And John, thank you for having me, brother. You're an awesome host. This was a lot of fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review, because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become. And I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you, because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.
Anyone can come from any place of brokenness and destitution and build an amazing life.